We're gonna sit at the welcome table. We are building a new way. We shall overcome. We are a gentle, angry people. We are standing on the side of love. We are one. Do you notice a theme there? This is just a sampling of songs we sing regularly, and there are a lot more where those came from. In fact, I counted. There are 3 times as many songs in our hymnals that begin with the word we than begin with the word I. I don't think that's a coincidence. I'm going to sit at the welcome table, or I shall overcome, just doesn't have the same ring to it. There's a lot of power in that tiny 2-letter word, we. Actually, we is why most of us come here, because we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to be part of a we. We know in our heads and in our hearts that we can't walk through this life alone. We depend on one another far more than we know. And together, we can accomplish things that a single individual cannot. As Marge Piercy writes, it starts when you say we and know who you mean. And each day you mean one more. But who do we mean when we say we? That's my question for us this morning. I ask it because this congregation is entering a time of transition, reflecting on who we are and who we want to become. I also ask because this congregation cares a lot about being a warm, welcoming, inclusive community, a welcome table. And we don't always succeed. I've heard too many stories of folks feeling excluded unintentionally when others weren't thinking carefully enough about who was in the room. Now, right now, I am thinking carefully about the fact that not all of you in this room are part of this congregation, which is the main we of this sermon. So my hope is that the rest of you can use my words to reflect on the groups in your life, while I invite the congregation to reflect on who we mean when we say we. One good starting place for all of us is to reflect on which we's we're each part of. So I invite you to think back to your childhood. Which we's, which groups, which identities did you belong to? You might think about demographics, race, religion, ethnicity, class, gender, geographic region, city, suburb, or town. Within those groups, did you feel like an insider? An outsider? Was there a sense of we in your home? And how have things changed since then? Which groups do you feel part of today? When do you feel included when someone uses the word we? When do you feel excluded? I ask these questions because we all live in bubbles, subsets of the human experience. There's no way around this. The human experience is just too vast. And the best we can do is to become aware of our bubbles and the assumptions we make. My childhood bubble was a homogeneous, white, upper-middle-class, artsy, politically liberal town in Connecticut near New York City. And within that, of course, there were other bubbles. As an adult, I've intentionally sought out bubbles with more diversity. But even my beloved Berkeley bubble is still a bubble. And really, I inhabit a bubble within Berkeley. I'm reminded of this in my work as a hospital chaplain. I meet people from seemingly every walk of life, lives I could never imagine. Listening to their stories, I learned that I assume things I didn't even know I was assuming. Like, some people actually like hospital food. And not everyone wants to go home from the hospital. And there are good reasons for both of those. And then there's the bubble of this beloved congregation. It's a tricky bubble. There are many commonalities that apply to most of us, but few that apply to all of us. To name the obvious, most of us are of European descent, middle class, well-educated, politically liberal, able-bodied, and drive cars to church. Most of us, but not all of us. The truth is, there is so much diversity in this room. Visitors, old-timers, folks new to Unitarian Universalism, and those who've lived it their whole lives. Folks of many generations, life experiences, cultures, and religious beliefs. There are folks who are grieving, celebrating, struggling with physical or mental health challenges, with addictions, to make ends meet. There are folks who are unemployed and folks who are struggling at work, folks who have no trouble getting here, and folks who are dependent on buses, paratransit, and the kindness of others. I could go on and on. We yearn to be more diverse as a congregation, and there is more diversity here than we know. The thing is, we come to church in part for this diversity of experience, and this diversity can be a challenge when it comes to inclusiveness. It's challenging to remember all that is held in this room, in this congregation. And when we forget, people can feel excluded and hurt. And sometimes they don't come back. I believe that we truly want UUCB to be a welcome table. We work hard at it, and there are so many things we do well. I like to joke lovingly about the welcome gauntlet on Sunday mornings. 2 levels of greeters, a visitor's table, and usually a welcome corner. If you want to arrive ungreeted, you'd better go in the back door. We yearn for everyone to feel welcome. And then sometimes we get so excited about being here that we forget. Longtime members can forget that not everyone knows what we mean when we say UUA, GA, the CT, Cisco, GRIP. Those with good hearing can forget that some folks can't hear unless we use a microphone. Drivers can forget how hard it is to get here without a car. Folks without young children can forget that some parents can only come if we offer childcare. Those who check email on their smartphones can forget that not all of us use computers, even today. Folks with enough to get by can forget that for some, even the smallest admission charge can be too much. My first 6 years at UUCB, I was a graduate student with a very limited budget. I missed virtually all the social events, dinners, dances, auctions, concerts, plays, because I couldn't afford the cover charge. We've gotten better at this, sliding scale, volunteer opportunities, and it's something to remember every time we have an event with a charge, because oftentimes folks are ashamed to admit that they can't afford to come. It is so easy to forget. We forget because we are human, because we live in bubbles of our own experience. So what do we do about this? How can we at UUCB create an even more welcoming table? Well, for one thing, we can ask who's not in the room and why. Is it lack of childcare or transportation, conflicts with work schedules, not knowing we're here, coming and feeling excluded? We can also try to ask who is in the room and remember how diverse we actually are. We can use microphones and translate acronyms. We can make our facilities more physically accessible, as we're doing with funds from the Capital Campaign. We can use phrases like some of us or many of us to make space for the diversity of our experiences. And we can change practices that are unintentionally exclusionary. During seminary, I had several classmates who identified as gender queer, neither male nor female fit. The worship practice of asking men to read or sing one verse and women the next left these classmates feeling excluded. So we changed the practice, dividing into high voices and low voices instead. And when we sang "We'll Build a Land," we replaced sisters and brothers with people together. We'll sing it that way a little later. Unfortunately, it's not always that easy. The song that inspired this sermon, "We Are," is one of my all-time favorites, and it is full of gender divisions. Grandmothers and grandfathers, mothers and fathers, daughters and sons, sisters and brothers. That's a lot for folks who live in the in-between. And I apologize to any of you who felt excluded. I don't know how to change that many words. And I'd be loath to mess with a song by Ysaye Barnwell. Though I confess to a fantasy of someday singing "We Are Sitting on the Side of Love" in solidarity with folks who can't stand. The thing is, this is hard work. It's a continuing process. It's not something we're going to do perfectly. We will include songs or readings that don't speak to everyone. We will use language that works for some and not others. We will forget the diversity in the room. We'll get so excited about going to the zoo that we'll speak without thinking. We will all make mistakes. When we make them, we can honor our covenant of right relations and do our best to apologize, make amends, and reconnect in the spirit of love. The point is not to be perfect. The point is to try, to be aware of our bubbles, to be aware that assumptions can harm, and to listen and look for ways in which we may be unintentionally excluding others. Why do this hard work? Because radical welcome is at the heart of Unitarian Universalism. And because this is the most profound and important spiritual practice available to us as human beings, loving each other with all our complexities, connecting across our differences, making room at the table. With this morning's focus on differences, I want to end with what we all have in common. We are all human, strong and vulnerable. We were all born, we will all die. We all laugh and cry, give and receive, love and lose. We all make assumptions. We all make mistakes. And we can all learn and grow. May we continue to learn and grow together. May we strive to be ever more welcoming here at UUCB and in the other communities in our lives. May we remember who we are, the breath of our ancestors, the spirit of love. Amen.